And so we will be having most of the night devoted to question and answer session where people can get up and express concerns, ask questions of our speakers and of the community. And if you have any accessibility issues and are uncomfortable standing up here, we can also bring the wireless mic to you. So thanks so much.
And please sign in if you haven't already. So I will just go ahead and introduce our speakers. We have Linda Farrell from the Pipeline Safety Coalition. We have Tim Spees, who's visiting us from Lancaster, involved with various groups down there. And we have Sam Koplinko-Lore from the Clean Air Council. So I'll go ahead and yield the floor to you guys. You can introduce yourself. These are folks we thought might be able to answer some of the questions you have. So I will yield the floor to you.
Thank you. I'm going to see if it's working. But I actually talk pretty loud. I used to be a school teacher, so watch out.
They're working now.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Yeah, I think I'm going to see if this goes up higher. I don't know if it goes up higher. I think this one was on anyhow.
I don't need one either.
Yeah, unless you need it for recording.
Yeah, this one's not. You need it for
You're going to give me the challenge of...
Here, you can use the wireless mic.
Here we go.
Here we go, a wireless one. You can tell we practiced. So, my name is Linda Farrell. I'm the Executive Director of Pipeline Safety Coalition. Jerry, one of your neighbors, had a couple of questions that she thought we should all address. And so I'm going to start by introducing myself by addressing those questions. And I'm going to pass that along the line, and we're all going to do the same thing, because I think they're good questions, Jerry. So who we are a nonprofit, federally recognized 501c3 as of about a month ago. We started Pipeline Safety Coalition as a result of about 75 disenfranchised local citizens in Chester County who were battling a Williams Transco pipeline project. And we realized very quickly that we didn't know a thing about pipelines. We didn't know what our rights were. We didn't know what the laws were. We didn't know what the regulations were. And so we formed this little ad hoc group, and we learned as much as we could, as quickly as we could. And 5 of us ultimately went to eminent domain in that project and won, and stopped a 2,000-foot section of a 30-inch to a 42-inch expansion of the Sentinel project down in Chester County. So most folks went back to their lives. In my case, the pipeline was in my field that I was farming, and I wasn't able to continue farming because there were a lot of anomalies in that 30-inch pipe. And that 30-inch pipe actually had been in the ground since 1950, and frankly, I wanted it replaced. I wanted it replaced for safety. So, fast forward a little bit, began working with community members all over the state as Pipeline Safety Coalition. I think in 2012 we were still a nonprofit, and we visited 70 municipalities in the state of Pennsylvania. And what we did was we offered a what you need to know and why workshop. These are the things you need to know if a pipeline is coming into your community. This is how you as a landowner will know what your rights are. And these are the federal regulations and the state regulations that you need to know about. So, so that's who we are. We have, I'm the executive director, we have 4 board members, one of whom is an attorney who used to work at the FERC, and she saw how disenfranchised landowners were, and she formed FERC Fights, also called Carolyn Elephant LOC, and she is one of our board members, and we rely upon her balanced and educated opinion when it comes to legal matters. We never, as Pipeline Safety Coalition, we never will advise you legally. We will always say that you should seek legal counsel. The third question is who finances us? There are PHMSA technical assistance grants that are offered throughout the nation. The technical assistance grants are offered to any entity that is interested in researching safety issues when it comes to pipelines. We have written 13 of these grants, and we've been funded 13 times. So while we're out meeting with you folks up here in Columbia County and Susquehanna County and Bradford County and Wyomissing and Berks County and Lancaster County, we're also working on grant projects to try and help educate people and to help improve pipeline safety because we do have pipelines in the ground and they are aging. So that's how we're financed. And my local ties to the community are the fact that Williams Transco is in my yard. I've worked with them. I know how they operate. And so I'm therefore interested in the Sunrise Project. I'm also interested in simply helping you folks get a sense of what your rights are again and how this all works. Before I go into anything further, I want to show you, I keep alluding to the fact that there's a pipeline project going on in my field. I look out of my kitchen window, I look out of my bedroom window, and my former farm, it sits below. This is a 42-inch pipe. If you look at the center here, someone has either walked through or crawled through. So it'll give you a sense of how big a 42-inch pipe is. And that's part of what we try to instill in people is when you hear a 42-inch pipe, you hear a 42-inch pipe, but you need to know what the whole process is about too, so that you are really looking at preserving your environment as well as your personal property, your land value. So let's see if I can do this correctly. That's a trench for the 42-inch pipe that is going over steep slopes. That's one of the reasons we fought the project. Is this is a 32% steep slope, and we felt that a horizontal drill would be a better mode of construction. Obviously, we lost that battle. But again, just to give you a sense of what a construction site is, typically, again, that's a 42-inch pipe. That's our little Prius in the back, color coordinated. They are lowering this pipe into the trench. They put the pipes in segments. So there's a staging area that is involved as well as the right-of-way area. And this is the staging area. This is my former farm. And again, I think, when you get the perspective of people next to the pipes, it gives you a sense of what you're looking at. I was telling someone, this is at the bottom of my driveway. This is a section of the pipe that was replaced, and on the side sections are metal frames that are put into the trench to keep the water from, or rather to keep the soil from collapsing into the trench. That is now covered with cement. This is crossing a roadway. So it can be amazing. I think that was open for about 2 days. I'm sorry, 2 weeks rather. And again, dropping the pipe into the ditch. There's a welder. And what I learned is the welds are a free process weld. So you have an initial weld And then there are 2 other wells on top of that well as well. This is a crossing, this is one of the issues that we had. We wanted to prevent the crossing of the Brandywine Creek for its value as a trout habitat. Unfortunately, we did not stop that process. So this is what happens when a creek or a watershed is open cut. This is called a cofferdam, and it's they block off half of the creek and dry it out, put the pipe in, and then flip it over, dry out the other side, and put the pipe in and connect them. Oops. I'm going backwards. So I thought I had more of that. Of the creek, because that's an important issue when you're looking at making agreements on a water crossing. When they put the pipe in a water crossing, they encase it in cement. So that's a pipe, again, in my front yard right now, that will go into, we have 2 crossings of a creek, and each crossing of the creek will be encased in cement as well. We talked, Jim, you and I talked about, and I think Kurt, you and I talked about the fact that that it is possible for an operator to work over their existing right-of-way rather than ask for an extension to their existing right-of-way. So if you're in an area where you already have a right-of-way and they're asking for an extension, keep in mind that they can work over this area here. There's a pipe, there's another pipe here, and there's another pipe here. So it's absolutely feasible for an operator to work within your existing right-of-way in many circumstances. Oops, that'd be great. Okay, this is the creek crossing, which is pretty dark, so you can't really tell. But the pipe again, the water is pulled out of the creek there. It's pumped around the cofferdam. And if you have an environmentally sensitive area in a watershed, this can be detrimental to the microbiology of the creek. And again, that's why we asked for the horizontal drill, which I think there's a pipeline company, Columbia, who's putting a pipe in about a quarter mile north of this, upstream. And they're going to horizontal drill because the community had educated them, Columbia, through the Williams Transco project. And so the Columbia project is now going to horizontal drill rather than open cut the creek. So you can see the devastation of what an open cut can bring to the creek. And I think that's probably, we'll leave it at that. And tell you that one of the reasons that we came to talk to you, Pipeline Safety Coalition came to talk to you, is to talk about considerations in signing an easement agreement. And I have these handouts, so I'm not going to go through the whole list here. But this was compiled in cooperation with the Kentucky Resources Council. And I mention that because the Kentucky Resource Council was influential in a Williams Transco project that was, just remember what that was? Bluestone, yeah. And Bluestone was going through some very environmentally sensitive areas in Kentucky. And so Kentucky Resource Council was very influential in that project actually being halted. At this point, it's on a very big hold. But what we would like to do is stress to you that you should not rush into an easement agreement. There are a lot of folks who feel that eminent domain means that you'll lose your property. That's not the case at all. It may be the message that you get from a land agent, but eminent domain does not in any way, shape, or form jeopardize the ownership of your property. The most that will happen is that a court will say, you have to give them the easement, you have to negotiate terms of the easement. And in that case, you really should have an attorney. These are the things that, that we talk about in the event that a pipeline project does happen. Yes. Yes.
In reference to the eminent domain, I get confused. They still end up getting the property.
Yes.
Is that a true statement?
They end up getting the use.
Right.
They end up getting an easement, a right-of-way on your property. And that does affect your, the property value. It does, you continue to pay the taxes on that right-of-way. You continue to pay the insurance on the property in that right-of-way.
So basically, if you were just persistent and kept saying no, 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 they still can legally use your property.
Could we maybe save this for the question and answer session until the other speakers have had a chance to introduce themselves?
Okay, that's great. I have up here and over there a lot of considerations, and too much really. I don't want to take up a lot of time here. I want to move on to Tim, and I'll answer any questions after we all finish here.
This one?
No, that works.
It's on now. I think we're good. Can you hear me? I don't really need this, but I can talk. My name is Tim Spees. I'm from Mardig Township in Lancaster County. That's in the southern end of Lancaster County. And my background is I'm a project superintendent for a construction company. And beginning of April, I had a fairly normal life. Went to work, I came home, ate dinner, said hello to the cat. Sometimes argued with my wife, sometimes not. One day Hillary came in and said that I heard they're going to put a pipeline through Tuckahoe Glen. Does anyone here know what Tuckahoe Glen is? Tuckahoe Glen is one of the several nature preserves along the Susquehanna River in western Lancaster County. There's the Shanks Ferry Wildflower Preserve, which is nationally known for its wildflowers. Tuckahoe Glen is one of the most beautiful, pristine, preserved sections of woodland, I think, in the state. And then Fishing Creek, which is part of the Rock Springs continuation of this project down towards Maryland. These are all preserves. Preserves. To be preserved forever for our use. Williams' reasoning, this is to give you an idea of their thinking. They said, well, preserves, their goal is that you can never build on them. And you can never build on a pipeline. So we have the same goals. Yeah, so I started to get fired up about this Tuckahoe Glen. This is where we go to hike. It's a couple miles from our house. This is where we go. It's beautiful. How could they do this? So we got all mad, angry, red in the face, made some noise, and Williams, all right, we hear you. We'll move it. So they moved it. Yay, we won. Woo! We won. So the next day I turn on Facebook, and the guy says, thanks. Now it's in my orchard. Oh. I gotta tell you, that hit me like a kick in the stomach because Williams didn't do that, I did that. My action, I did that. And then I started to get more involved with what's going on. What's going on at either end of this pipeline? What's really happening here? And when I saw and got a picture of what's really happening here, and I'll give you some key points of what I believe are myths and truths, and we can talk about that more. Because one thing we decided down in Lancaster is, A, this is not going to become a partisan issue. We actually had a Democratic candidate for Pitts' seat offer to do a robocall for us for our meeting. We said no. This isn't about Democrats and Republicans. This is about the issue, not a partisan thing. We also are we recognize that everyone has a difference of opinion. So I'm here to tell you tonight that I recognize your right. I know some gentlemen over here seem to be in favor of this pipeline. I heard them speaking. That is your right. All I ask is that you respect my right to oppose it. And so we understand this is, and we don't want this to divide our community in Lancaster. And I would urge you people here to not be divided by Williams and their project. Because once they're gone, once the Marcellus shale gas is gone, you're still living with each other. So don't let them divide you. We all have differences of opinion, but we all have to let each other have them. So I became more involved with this, and I seem to have become somewhat of one of the leaders of this whole movement, which started in Lancaster and Martin Township, and has now spread to Conestoga Township and West Hempfield Township. I know Lebanon is getting involved and active, and we're here tonight. Some of the things I feel we need to understand, if you don't agree with me, speak out, because I have no fear of telling Williams' side of things. We have nothing to lose by hearing their side. I was always taught when I grew up, make a pros and cons list when you're trying to make a decision on something. I ask each of you here tonight to go home. Don't listen to me. Don't take my word for anything, and don't disregard what I say. But learn for yourself. Make a pros and cons list. Good reasons to do this pipeline, bad reasons to do this pipeline, and we will see you at the next meeting, because you will be involved. Williams has stated that this is a convenient bypass going down through Columbia, Schuylkill, Lebanon, Lancaster County, a convenient bypass to their existing Transco route, which goes across into New Jersey, back across North Philly, and across the southern tip of Lancaster County. They still have on their website as a possible alternative that existing Transco route. And I can't believe that if Williams could prove that it just is impossible to upgrade that existing route, that they wouldn't have shown us the proof and said, no, just let it go and let's move on. County Commissioner in Lancaster, Craig Lehman, has asked them repeatedly, as I have at the scoping hearings, to do an EIS study on that route and prove to us that you can't use that existing route. When they say it's nearly impossible, to me that means it's going to be very expensive for us. They're going to be sucking so much gas out of Marcellus shale, they can afford it. So I realized it seemed very obvious to me that this was about corporate greed. They say they will admit to 40% of this gas being shipped overseas. I personally believe that they're saying that because if they said, hey, we're going to sell all this gas overseas, they wouldn't be able to use eminent domain. So they wouldn't be able to take the use of your property. And Dave raised the question, you still own the property. Great, that's really great. You can't build on it, you still pay taxes on it, and I believe, this is a question we're trying to get answered, but I believe you better get some more insurance for that, because Williams Insurance covers them. Pipeline blows up in your property and burns your neighbor's house down, you need insurance for that. And you may not be able to sell that house, because you better check with your mortgage company about that. Mortgages are getting a little nervous about these high pressure gas lines. So anyway, the overseas issue. I believe that once the pipeline's in, they can say, oh, our business model changed. We can sell it all. Because they're getting 5 times what they can get here overseas. 5 times. Now, anybody in business, duh, where are they going to sell it? We sell it overseas. And I had a gentleman at a township meeting one night question my patriotism because I was trying to squash this capitalism, this American way of life. And he pointed to the wall behind it, and there was a bunch of servicemen and women who had died in battle, and implied that I was being un-American. I said, thank you for that. Thank you for opening that door. Does anyone in this room know what we did with our scrap steel prior to World War II? Raise your hand if you do. This gentleman does. I paid attention in history class. For years, we sold our scrap steel to Japan because we could get more money from Japan than selling it here. Does that sound familiar? Okay? What did they do with that scrap steel? That is correct. They built planes, and ships, and bombs, and came to Pearl Harbor and killed 2,000 of those brave men and women. So please don't tell me that what I'm doing isn't American. This is not good for our national security. The Department of Energy has said this is not good for our economy. And when they start selling all this gas more and more overseas, what does that do to supplies here? Anyone know? The price goes up. Studies have shown that the prices will actually go up for natural gas for us. So Williams and the gas companies are going to make money overseas, ka-ching. They're going to make money over here, ka-ching. And what do we get? We get a 42-inch, 1,500-pound high-pressure gas line through our properties. And no matter what we say, no matter how many of us say no, the way things are structured now, they'll do it. There's something called Dillon's Rule. So back in history, in 1870, they wanted to put a railroad across the country. You kept running into these pesky little towns that stopped. And there's a quote from a railroad baron in the West Coast. He said, you know, we need federal regulations that sound good, but don't really do much. And Dillon's Rule, he was a lawyer in Iowa. Dillon's Rule is adopted. And if you look, Google it. Pennsylvania is a Dillon's Rule state and a home rule state. Dillon's Rule is what says federal government trumps state, state trumps local governments. So back in 1870, I was able to see, holy mackerel, I always knew something was wrong. There's where it happened. There's the date when we were not any longer a representative democracy. We have no say in things like our clean air, our clean water. We have no control over those things. And we should. So it went from pipeline to Tukwon Glen to what's wrong with our country. This takes us into whole kinds of areas, like the influence of corporate money on our politicians, and our energy, and where are we headed with energy, with our whole energy structure. We've got differences of opinion sometimes when it comes to how close we are to the tipping point with the irreversible environmental damage. You know what, folks? I think if we're going to talk about how close we are to a tipping point, I think we've gone too far. And so what are we going to do? We're going to suck all this gas out here. And here's another myth. Natural gas, clean burning. Absolutely. You burn a piece of coal on this table and you burn some gas, that's cleaner. The American Academy of Science has predicted that 4 out of 10 of these fracked wells will leak methane. Methane is, they're not sure, 25 to 30 times more powerful than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas. I've never been an environmental activist, but the more I learn, the more afraid I'm getting of what we're doing. So yes, there will be some jobs. Yes, you'll get money if you give an easement. Yes, there'll be some economic benefit to our country. Absolutely, I can't argue that. At what cost? When if we, you know, and I'm probably going in areas I shouldn't, so I'll stop there and say we should be moving towards other sources of energy. Germany is 75% solar. Since when did we stop being a leader? Why are we so far behind? So that's what's driving me all up and down the line here, because this is so much more than a pipeline in my backyard. And speaking of which, did everyone here talk about a pipeline? How about 2? How about 3? Because the industry's stated goal, does anyone know what the industry's stated goal is? Right now they're at 6,000 wells. And on the Diane Rehm show this was brought up, and the guy from the gas industry didn't dispute it. I'm guessing it's true. 100,000 wells in the next 20 to 30 years. In Pennsylvania alone. People talk about, oh my God, have you seen what it's like up there now? There's only 6,000 folks. This is what they want. Now, if anyone here thinks that one 42-inch pipeline down along the Susquehanna River into Maryland is going to serve 100,000 wells, you're kidding yourself. It's an open access line, which means any industry that wants to can tap into that line. Any above ground structures can be added if and when they deem them necessary, and all they need is FERC's permission to do so, and they have never been denied. That means compressor stations. When they've got more gas coming out of Marcellus Shale, they will add more compressor stations, maybe in your yard, maybe not. I saw a video about a woman talking about a compressor station. They had no idea what it was going to be like. They used to call their kids in for dinner. Now they got to flick a light because the kids can't hear it. Kids can hear them yell.
I got to argue with you on that.
You can argue with me all you want, and that's
I
fine.
mean, have anybody here ever been to a compressor station on a pipeline? Can you hear it? Oh, yeah.
Yes? Okay.
And also, when you're saying about the wells in northern Pennsylvania, did you ever hear of the Millennium Line? Do you know where that Millennium Line goes to? It goes to New York City. Also, 20 miles from here, there's a 42-inch line underground in Chickasha, Pennsylvania. And there's nobody, it's never exploded. The lines that have been in the Chickasha on that pipeline have been in there since the 1920s and 30s. There's never been an explosion on them yet.
Okay.
Would you like to keep comments for after?
Well,
all
you
of
got
our
a
speakers
sign
have-
over here that says, no hate speech, okay? And when I'm listening to this gentleman up here, it was nothing but a hate speech about Williams Company. But there's more than one Williams company, there's more than one pipeline company in the United States. And all I hear is Williams. Is there any other pipeline companies in Pennsylvania that puts pipelines in besides Williams?
Absolutely. I'm talking about a greenfield project that is not necessary. I'm talking about a greenfield project going through, in Lancaster County anyway, it's going through 53 preserved farms and conserved woodlands. And it's not necessary. If this was necessary for our economy, for jobs, for gas distribution, I would back down and let it happen. It's not. They have an existing route. They can upgrade and add looping and do whatever they have to do to that loop. It'll cost them a lot of money. Too bad. This isn't hate speech. This is about,
It sounds like a hate speech.
this is about our rights. as
Right,
communities.
so we can continue this debate, but I would be remiss if I didn't give Sam a chance to
Yeah,
introduce himself.
that's all I have to
before
say.
we-
I love you all, by the way. Don't hate anybody. And I do respect everyone's right for an opinion. And like I said at the beginning, all I ask is that you give me a right now.
Hey everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. My name is Sam Blinkalaire. I work with the Clean Air Council. And thank you to Jerry for your questions at the beginning of the meeting. Talk a little bit about transparency. So the Clean Air Council is a citizens organization. We have 8,000 members in Pennsylvania and the tri-state area. I personally am based out of Philadelphia, and I work all along different pipeline projects that are proposed for the eastern part of Pennsylvania. My job title is shale gas organizer, so working with communities that have infrastructure projects in their community to make sure that people have the information that they want. Any question that people want to send me, my job is to do research and get that information back to you so that you can make an informed decision about the infrastructure that's proposed for your community. We're partly member funded and also partly foundation grant funded. My particular position is grant funded through the William Penn Foundation, which is trying to make sure that as the shale gas boom takes place, communities that are impacted have access to the information about what these projects are, what's going to be happening, and what they can do about it in terms of accessing the regulatory processes like the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission that has jurisdiction over this particular pipeline, and also for within the state pipelines being able to access the Public Utility Commission and the Department of Environmental Protection. So that's why I'm here today. If you have any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to ask me, contact me. My sole purpose for being here is to help you guys organize if you want to organize, get the information you want, and be able to make a decision about what you're going to do in relation to the pipeline that's proposed for Columbia County. So speaking a little bit about work that's happening along other parts of the pipeline. We've heard from Tim about what's happening in Lancaster County. The pipeline goes through in the north, Susquehanna and Wyoming counties, then Luzerne, Columbia, Northumberland, Schuylkill, Lebanon, and Lancaster. So it's going through a tremendous number of places. And so far, most people along the route have felt as though they are alone in relations to a land agent coming to their door. And what I want to tell you is that you're not alone. People have been organizing along the entire route. Community meetings like this, every single county at this point has had a community meeting to discuss the pipeline project and get information and talk with other people about, as a community, how are we going to respond. One issue is that people aren't always on the same page. You know, in Lancaster, for the most part, everybody's been opposed, but in different counties, it's a different situation. So I just want to share with you a few stories of what's happening in other counties to give you guys an idea of what's happening on other points of this pipeline. So up in the north in Susquehanna and Wyoming County, most of the work that's happening right now, is door-to-door canvassing, doing educational work. So there's a group called the Energy Justice Network and also Shale Field Organizing Committee that's put this together working on making sure that landowners have information about what are their rights when it comes to the pipeline company and signing an easement, and as well as just what is the pipeline in general. Most folks have some idea of what it means to have a 42-inch pipeline in your backyard, but some folks don't. So that's what's happening right there. They're doing community meetings starting in September. Schuylkill County has just started to have a community meeting like this. Their date is September 6th. And a lot of the work there is very similar, educationally based. What's the pipeline? What can we do about it? What are our rights? There are a few different strategies that landowners have taken so far in opposition to the pipeline. And one of those is a letter of denial of permission to Williams. So if people have decided that they are going to oppose the project, they're beginning to think about how can we work together to stop it. And one strategy they've taken so far is to write a public letter to Williams saying we do not give you permission to survey or build a pipeline on our land. That's one strategy that some landowners have taken. Another strategy is to negotiate for the best possible easement. Now, there are a lot of different factors, and there's some materials here as well to consider when you're negotiating an easement. And these are the things that most people, including myself, didn't know a few years ago. So, paying for lawyers' fees. What's going to happen if they cross a waterway? In terms of remediation of your land, what are they going to do for remediation? Do they have the permission to put in any more pipelines? Do they have the permission to put in any more buildings? These are all conditions that if you actually do sign an easement, you want to make sure that the contract with Williams protects your rights as much as possible and that you get the best deal possible from Williams. This is something that the initial easement that's generally sent to you protects the company. That's the deal for the most part. They offer, in general, a rather low sum of money, price per foot, and you don't have that many protections in the actual contract. So we have information at the front desk there in terms of knowing your rights. It's called the Know Your Rights for Landowners. On the back side of that page is a list of about 40 different negotiating points. And all of those can be negotiated with an easement. It's important to know all of them. What are the potential dangerous possibilities of having a pipeline on your land, and how can you be protected as a landowner or as a community member living nearby to one of these lines? The story that I like to tell is that last year I was working with landowners in Vermont on a pipeline there, doing landowner education. And one landowner in particular, it was a similar story with the pipeline, and she was offered initially $2,500 for, in this case, Vermont Gas, to build a pipeline on her land. And she decided that she was going to negotiate. And 20 contracts later, she was up to $50,000 and had protective clauses for lawyers' fees. If there's any unconditional release of gas, they would cover that. For any damages to her property, they would cover that. All the remediation of the land above the pipeline, they would cover that. You know, and she still, at this point, still has not signed because she's trying to get an even better deal. So that's the information that, no offense to, Williams operators, or land agents, it's your job. However, the contracts that they send you in the mail or in person are not in your favor at the beginning, and by negotiating with them, you completely have the right to keep negotiating all the way through the eminent domain process until the end. All those can be shown in court as having had a previous contract up with Williams, and that can actually hold up in court in some cases. So it's important that you know your rights. I'm happy to talk with people more afterwards if you have specific questions. And yes, if you can email me, call me, what have you, or come up and ask at this point. Happy to answer any questions.
question. Knowing that the pipeline through the various counties in Pennsylvania is probably in different phases. It's probably, moved along a little bit faster in Lancaster County than what it has in Columbia County and some of the other counties. So to your point, Sam, when you're saying that the contracts that are typically sent by Williams are at a very low compensation, has anyone in any of the other counties received such a contract offer? To know that truly that's based in fact?
That truly they do give you a low number
Right,
initially.
in Lancaster County or in Susquehanna County, have there been offers, truly a contract offer written by Williams yet to this point?
So far as from what I know is that they've been in the talking phase. They haven't actually put anything in
Okay,
writing.
so that's a supposition then, to a point. What you're assuming from things that have happened in the past on other pipelines, other negotiations. So you really can't base that and say, that's what they're offering at this point, because you don't know, because offers have not been made.
Well,
Am I right?
they have been made in terms of land agents talking and saying, we're
Right,
thinking
I
about
mean, I've
$50 a
spoken-
foot.
We've spoken to our land agent,
Yeah.
have not spoken any monetary amount whatsoever. So I guess you haven't answered my question. It's not really something then that you can say, the monetary offers that they're making on the Atlantic Sunrise project are lowball offers at this point.
Yeah, so the initial,
Let me stop you there, yes or no?
yes, they are lowball because people have had in-person conversations for $15 a foot, and then through talking with the land agent have gotten more.
Okay, but, I wouldn't think that Williams is going to give you a verbal offer, that it is going to be a written formal contract, just as you said, a lot of great stuff.
Actually, I would answer Sam's question is no, because there is no project yet.
It's still.
There is no pipeline project, doesn't
It's still-
exist.
it's still
That'll happen in
pre-filing.
May of 2015.
Okay,
It's
so
just
we
talk
don't
at this
know
point.
then realistically.
All we know is the history of how these
Right.
things have always
Okay.
gone. They
So
could
the answer-
turn around and offer you 10 times your
Right.
assessed value. Absolutely, they could do that. I wouldn't count on that. But yes,
I agree.
I think the answer to your question is no.
And actually, I can tell you from experience, from personal experience, not only my personal experience, but with other landowners over the years, yes, the operator, regardless of Williams, Columbia, Sunoco, whatever, they will make verbal offers to landowners and negotiate verbally before putting a contract together. That's not uncommon at all.
I have not heard of any verbal contracts or money amounts in Lancaster County with any property owners as of yet.
And let me be clear, I'm not talking about a verbal contract, I'm talking about a negotiation.
Right, a verbal monetary.
Verbal
that's not-
monetary negotiations go on all the time.
Yeah, can I just say one more thing about that? That in Susquehanna County, people have gotten verbal offers from land agents. And those have ranged anywhere from $15 a foot to a few $100s a foot. So that's the range. And my understanding is that because it's kind of like a divide methodology of having individual conversations with individual landowners in order to try and drive people down.
Can I speak to that too, Sam? And this is not the Atlantic Sunrise project, but it happens to be the same operator. And this is absolutely a documentable circumstance. The other three landowners in proximity to where my property is decided that we didn't want to be divided. That's something that Pipeline Safety Coalition encourages communities to talk to each other. If you talk to your neighbor, you're going to be talking about a cumulative impact to your community. This pipeline is not going through your property only. It's going to go through Jim's. It's going to go through Carl's. It's going to go through Ann's. It's a cumulative impact to your community. And so it behooves you to talk to each other collectively, not only about the impact to your community, but also about if this project does come about, what your compensation is. In our case, we had 3 people sitting at the table. And one person, and I'm not going to get into specifics other than to say, 2 landowners had about this big a piece of the pie. Our piece of the pie was this big. One of the landowners with this piece said, I want 20,000 because that's what it's going to cost to re-side the back of my house. And they were given 20,000. I can document that for you if you like. So the negotiations of how much a person gets for an easement, there isn't a logical format for how that works. Sometimes it's just a matter of what will it take for you to sign an easement. In our case, we didn't care about the money. We were interested in protecting a tributary to the Brandywine Creek. And rather than have 50 trees in 2,000 feet, in 900 feet, rather than have 50 trees removed in 900 feet, we said, we'll give you a temporary we'll give you a temporary workspace. So you don't have to buy us. You don't have to pay us anything. Just leave the trees. When you do have to remove some trees, replace 2 for 1. These are the things that Sam was talking about, where you can negotiate personally, but you can also negotiate as a community. What's going to be the best thing for your community if this pipeline happens? And I will say, Tim had an absolute spot-on observation. Williams-Transco has that Levy line. Williams-Transco has the Sentinel line in the lower, the line that line right there that they're upgrading to 42-inch and have 2 other lines in there. They absolutely can move this fuel along their existing ROWs by expanding them, but it's going to be expensive. And it's going to take a little more work, and it's going to take a little more time. So I would suggest that as a community, you look at how important it is to protect your community in a situation where it's doable. It's doable to have that pipeline go somewhere else.
Great, so we're already getting into the question and answer section, which is great. We really wanted to devote a lot of time to that so that everyone can have their questions and concerns heard. As has already been pointed out, there are some guidelines that we posted up that we are asking everyone to keep aware of as they speak. Obviously, this is a contentious issue. It affects many people very personally, so we're asking people to come up to the mic so that everyone can hear them and we can keep it in order a little bit, so that only one person is speaking at a time. Please be respectful of everyone's time and keep your comments as short as necessary to communicate your point. Obviously, we're not going to cut anyone off. No hate speech or derogatory language, please. That would make other people potentially uncomfortable. And try to please give everyone a chance to speak before, if you have more comments and more questions. Please wait for a while so that other people who might take a little longer to ask their questions get a chance to also be heard. And we will be here for as long as necessary to help answer questions. And if there are questions that come up that one of our speakers or somebody else does not have an answer to, I'll be personally writing them down. I can take your contact info, and myself and Sam and a number of other people will be doing research following up on this to make sure that any question that gets asked tonight gets a satisfactory answer is our goal. So if it doesn't get answered tonight, we're gonna work on it ASAP. Thank you so much to our speakers, and if folks would like to queue up and start the Q&A section, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
My name is Steve. I have a lot of questions, but I'm only going to limit it to 2 right now. First, a very simple question. Is this a done deal or not? What's the likelihood of that really going to pass?
I can tell you that the project have been stopped. And there's a pretty common belief that this Atlantic Sunrise project is a kind of a redo of the Commonwealth Pipeline project. It was coming from the same area, only into Chester County, as opposed to the direction that it's taking now. And in fact, the direction that's taking, the Atlantic Sunrise is taking is one of the directions that Commonwealth took and was opposed very strongly in Lancaster and York counties. So, and was stopped. And I can tell you from a personal conversation with one of the operators that was planning the Commonwealth Pipeline project, one of the reasons they stopped that pipeline project was because Williams didn't want to see it happen because Williams wanted that business. Now, that's hearsay, absolutely, but it's business. So no, the short answer is no, this is not a done deal.
I can speak to Lancaster County specifically. Actually, myself and one of the other people that's very much involved, we got together last night, and she said, I think it's very close to being done here. Because in Lancaster County, in Manor, Conestoga, and Martin Townships, some archaeologists from Millersville have pointed out to the archaeologists working for Williams, and we told them this from the beginning, you can't put a shovel anywhere in the path of that pipeline through those 3 townships and not hit Native American artifacts. The archaeologists at the first scoping hearing referred to that as the Machu Picchu of the eastern United States Indian community. And sure enough, the other day, I had this secondhand, but the engineer from Williams looked at the maps and said, well, we can't go over here, we can't go over here. And secondhand, you know, I said that? He said, and I quote, we're screwed. So if they have to do a major reroute, they're going to hit the same firestorm of opposition. So the question is, if it can't go through a part of Lancaster, will they leave altogether? Will they go around Lancaster? So it's really a community by community thing, and at some point, if it just becomes untenable, I'm hoping they say, you know what, we're just going to have to put the money down and